Hey folks, it's finally time for Monza. And I'm saying this enthusiastically because you can tell that I'm not quite the biggest Ferrari fan in the world. I mean, we all like Ferrari, but I'm not like the big part of the Tifosi in a way. So that's why the enthusiasm exists over here. But let's hope it's also there for you as well, if you are a Ferrari fan or not, because this weekend is going to be fantastic. Lots of great racing action, potentially for P2 in the championship as well. And we could see so many fun battles in the midfield. And there's so much to look forward to in this particular Grand Prix weekend. And that's what we're going to discuss on this episode of the Inside Line F1 podcast. So my name is Somal Arora. I'm the host of The Driving Force on Disney Plus Hotstar, joined by Kunal Shah, the former marketing head of the Force India F1 team, who's also an FIA-accredited Formula One journalist for the Viaplay network in Norway. And let's start off with some banter, Kunal. I don't want to start off with all the serious stuff like, oh, Hamilton's getting a 5-place engine penalty, and we might see the contract the contract recognition board pass a big ruling and all that. So that's too serious for us to begin with. So if you had to pick one hilarious thing that you're going to look forward to on this weekend's race, what would it be for you? In this weekend, actually, I kind of messed it up, but it's okay.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, if there was anything that I would definitely look for is a change of fortunes for Ferrari, maybe. I mean, just arriving in to Monza, their transporter trucks actually caught fire, that went viral, and they had an issue which Formula One cars usually could have at Monza, which is a brakes issue. And of course, the transporter had brakes overheating that normally doesn't happen in Monza. You could just see a brake failure given just how different this circuit is. But that's to look forward to. I'd love for, the Tifosi needs to be celebrated. I mean, it's only unfortunate that you and I are not doing this in Italian. Otherwise, we would have had a lot of Italian listeners as well, right? So the Tifosi most definitely needs to be celebrated. I mean, yes, we make fun of Ferrari, and they are, to be made fun of, unfortunately, right? But the Tifosi is actually one of the oldest fan clubs. I mean, it's all of Italy is a fan club for Ferrari, if we were to put it that way. They're very resilient with their love for Ferrari. They're also very patient, and I think Monza most definitely celebrates the emotion of being a Tifosi. And Samuel, you said you may not be a Tifosi, but your background, which not everybody else can see on the podcast because it's audio, is actually a Michael Schumacher Ferrari F1 World Champion background. So you might need to explain that a little bit.
Well, the thing is, I don't quite have a team in Formula One. There's just so many fun characters to watch. But again, a second justification might be, I'm a Man United fan, so I don't need two things in a row to kind of burden my emotional state of mind. So I can't pick two red teams to really mess up my mind. But on the subject of Ferrari, it's amazing that the Tifosi come on every single year, so passionate, and we've seen this before, right? They've been through worse. They've been through tougher times in Ferrari's history where they were not fighting for championships at all, had a terrible car, but the support never ever drowned on. And just watching the atmosphere this weekend, it's like an ultimate comparison. One weekend we get the Dutch fans, then the Italians. It's like Formula One has a competition of the fans going on consecutively in 2 weekends. But they've been through worse in terms of Ferrari's history. But I don't think they've been through worse in terms of Ferrari's livery, Kunal. What is that? That looks ghastly. It's like a venomous monster just bit them on one side, and you can see one part of the body turning yellow, but the other is red. And it's not even like the right shade of yellow, because had it been completely yellow, we would have loved it. But it's an awkward mixture, like the Minions in a way.
The Minions, that's the word, especially with the yellow racing suit overalls and all the helmet specials. So, the one thing I love about the livery is the Ferrari typeface on the rear wing in yellow. That looks gorgeous. That looks retro. It brings out a lot of emotion for me, at least, right? And I love that. But yeah, some parts of the other stuff looks like, my 2-year-old daughter was doing a paint and then she realized, that's it, I'm going to distract myself and do something else. But it actually needs to be spoken. Ferrari 75 years, Monza 100 years. Just the amount of Ferrari and Monza that we've seen as play a part in Formula One's rich history over all these years. I mean, it's one of the oldest, best racing tracks. Christian Horner says a lot of things. We may not agree with a lot of things he says, but one of the things he did say was circuits like Monaco, Monza, Spa, maybe even Suzuka, I think, should be guarded as a fortress because of what they represent in Formula One. So I am eager to see, Monza for absolute different reasons. It's the temple of speed, as we call it. The cars are at their skinniest wings best, most slippery, the lowest downforce settings of the season that will be seen this season.
And I think Christian Horner is so right about that, because when have we ever seen a really bad race at Monza? I mean, every year, regardless of whatever may happen, even though we may know the winner, we don't get a bad race at Monza, which is why we love it so much. And there's so much of fun stuff to talk about this weekend and what we are looking forward to. But we should do that after a short break. We'll be right back. Yes, indeed, folks. You can also join us for the live race watch along for free this weekend by registering on the link in the description of this podcast episode. And last time out, right, when we had the live watch along for the Belgian GP, we were able to track the strategy so well. We saw exactly what was going on. Steve was giving his insights on exactly how he expected the race to go out, and more often than not, things went his way as well. So it was really fun to send in all of our questions about what do we think about a certain driver, or is there any paddock insights that he can reveal? And that was an experience that genuinely was pretty enjoyable for me. So if you would like to join in and be a part of that for Monza this weekend, click on the link in the description below to join us for free. And this weekend, Kunal, why wouldn't we want to join in? Because it's going to be such a special race all year round, right? The atmosphere we've already talked about, but also we are going to see an incredible fight for second in the championship. That's exciting. That's something to look forward to.
Yes, I see what you've done there. You conveniently just said, you know what, we know Red Bull's going to win. We know which Red Bull driver's going to win. Let's just focus on P2 in the constructors' battle. And that's obviously Ferrari versus Mercedes. I did some digging earlier on in the season, Sommel, and Mercedes has actually scored more points on an average since Australia this season. So literally since the third race of the season, Mercedes has actually scored more points on an average than Ferrari. And by my calculations, just mathematically, they should catch Ferrari closer to the end of the season. And maybe that's Abu Dhabi, where last year they were fighting for P1 and this year they'll be fighting for P2. Who knows, But there has to be more on the banter, because I just remembered a few points. I spoke about brakes earlier. I remember one of the races earlier on in the season, Sebastian Vettel, maybe even Valtteri Bottas turned around and spoke about brake dust. And Vettel actually came into the media pen, like the old school racers with lots of brake dust on his face and his nose and his mouth and so on. And they said how this year's cars are throwing brake dust on the driver and they need to have, that part of the car redesigned. So it's also not they don't end up inhaling all the brake dust, right? So Monza could be yet another race where more than just one driver actually walks up to the media pen with brake dust in their face. Now, this is assuming that they just remove the helmet and the brake dust is there and they don't end up wiping it off. So brake dust will be something to look forward to. And sticking to old school still, I'm still going to call it the Parabolica. They have renamed the corner to Michel Alboreto, but for me, it's always going to be the Parabolica. I mean, Eau Rouge, Radillon, the Spoon Curve, 130R, they are all the Lesmos, the Parabolica, the Ascari. You guys know where to get the drift. I'm never going to end up renaming this. It's like I still call it Bombay and not Mumbai. You get the drift.
Exactly. It sounds more natural. Nothing against Michele Alboreto, though. I mean, he's a legend who should be honored with the corner name, but just not Parabolica, right? It feels odd to call it anything other than that. And speaking of things that are celebrated back in Italy, is it just me, or are Ferrari celebrating some anniversary of any sort every year since 2017? Like I've seen some sticker for them celebrating 90 years or something, or 70 years or something, or 75 years or something, or 100 years of something. I mean, do they have an anniversary every year of any? Oh, okay, wait. Anniversary literally means having something every year. But do they have a different anniversary of something, a different milestone every single year? Because they always have a special livery or something of sorts.
The marketing, communication, and stats team is working overtime to get all this attention. I remember previous seasons, the attention was which race of the season will Ferrari have the mission win now? logos or not, and then suddenly they would say, hey, we're having it this race, and hey, we're not having it that race. And talking of stats, I am missing our dear F1 stats guru on the show, who couldn't be a part of the live recording, but he does have his say with numbers later on in the show.
Indeed, yes, we should come to that in a little bit. But first off, let's talk about the serious stuff, right? About the battling, about the racing on track. And I suppose I've already alluded to the fact that Red Bull Racing have run away with the title. Not that I need to, because you all watch Formula One, right? That's why you tune in to this particular show. But the point is, Kunal, if we take Spa-Francorchamps as a basis for this weekend, because obviously there are many similar characteristics, right? Long flowing corners, there's lots of long straights as well. That means that Red Bull Racing could really have a fun time. And over there at Spa, they dominated. They had the best weekend so far in the season. Not that Monza is like 100% fit to that same mold, but if that is true, and if Spa is the benchline, the benchmark that we're working forward from, Monza could be a tough, tough time for Ferrari, and it could be incredible for Red Bull Racing. So this might just end up being their worst defeat ever, unfortunately. Of course, assuming that something dramatic doesn't happen, because the last couple of years we have seen two midfield drivers win races at Monza. Pierre Gasly 2020, Daniel Ricciardo 2021. So if things go the normal route, well, it could be Red Bull all over again.
Well, I think we will have a third different driver for a third different year at Monza, because I don't believe Ricardo or Gasly are going to end up winning, but you never know if Verstappen ends up parking his car on somebody else like he did last year. But no, in all seriousness, in theory, this is actually the worst circuit on paper for Red Bull Racing. Up until now, they've never had a podium here since the hybrid era. That's a stat you'll hear everybody say all the time as you build up to the weekend, right? And the two times they actually had finished on the podium, both Verstappen and Perez actually had a penalty, so they actually didn't end up scoring that podium. So Red Bull will definitely want to rewrite that. And one of the reasons I think they will rewrite that is, you mentioned Spa and Monza and the characteristics and being similar and so on. One needs to remember that the spec needed for Monza is actually even more lower downforce than what Spa did. So the only question on my mind is, what will the gap be between Verstappen and then Ferrari and then Mercedes? And just a reminder, in Spa, in qualifying, in those conditions, in that low downforce setup, etc., the gap between Max and Lewis was 1.8 seconds. Lewis was the faster of the Mercedes cars. Of course, the cars were also needing to be, driven a little higher because of the elevation changes and the curbs around Spa. So let's see what the gap is going to be this weekend. That's literally all that this episode needs to focus on, Samuel. What is the gap that's going to be between Verstappen, Ferrari, Mercedes, and then, of course, now even Verstappen and Perez?
That is absolutely true, yeah. And I so want to hear Steve's take on it during the live watch along, because the last time we were astonished to see that Mercedes was so far back down. And that's at the Belgian GP watch along, that is, not Zandvoort. So we were quite intrigued to see how the pace was evolving on different compounds as well. And just analyzing it during the watch along is so much fun. And you can be a part of that whole experience. So, as I mentioned previously, check out the link in the description. But on the subject of this particular race as well, that's also going to be an interesting topic, right? Mercedes in the race. I mean, theoretically as well, they've got trouble with straight line speed. They've got trouble with qualifying. So it may seem like a hard ball, but we have seen them make advances. Slowly but steadily, they are quite getting there. And they did beat Ferrari on merit last time, Kunal. Like, absolutely on merit. They were, certain to have both their cars up ahead. And of course, they ended up having one ahead. And we saw what happened in Zandvoort. But this time out, I'm going to be intrigued. Is it, of course, theoretically not going to be in their favor, but just how do they respond this weekend? What do they do? And where are they in relation to Ferrari? Because that P2 battle, as you mentioned early on, could genuinely be getting pretty close.
I think it's already getting pretty close, and Mercedes will be hoping that they are able to dial their car in for Monza much better. And you spoke of qualifying. Qualifying is critical out here because overtaking has not been as easy, even though it's such a high-speed track, because pretty much everybody's sitting in everybody's DRS a lot of times. But on an even more serious note, for Mercedes, just chipping away at that gap is such a psychological advantage. And let's remember, they've not won a race this season. So imagine them finishing P2 despite no race wins and just one pole position yet. So lots of records that they will end up talking. And in qualifying on Saturday, I'm sure you remember what happened. I think it was 2019. Nobody wanting to give each other a tow, and pretty much every driver ended up missing their final runs in Q3. So watch out for the traffic, watch out for the tow, because that tow is definitely worth more than a couple of tenths around a qualifying lap of Monza.
Exactly. That psychology is going to be pretty interesting to watch over the course of the weekend, and also in qualifying where all the drivers are just unwilling to go past. That's also going to be very interesting because I think we've seen it for the last couple of years running, right? The drivers just do not want to be the first person out in Q3. So that mess could still very well end up appearing this weekend. So I wish that that doesn't happen. I hope they find a fix to that. But again, it's racing psychology. Probably never will. So, with that said, it's time for a special segment. Here's F1 Stats Guru with the stats preview for the Italian GP this weekend.
Hey folks, it's time to do the stats preview of the Italian Grand Prix. My name is Sundaram, also known as the F1 Stats Guru. Let's talk numbers. Now, the Monza circuit is celebrating its 100th anniversary this month, having first opened back in September 1922, a century ago. And it was the third purpose-built autodrome in the world after Brooklands in the UK and Indianapolis in the United States of America. This venue is aptly termed the Temple of Speed, as 85% of the lap is run at full throttle, the highest of any F1 track. Jeez, that puts a lot of stress on the engines. Cars complete a lap around this track with an average speed of 264 kilometers per hour, the highest amongst any F1 circuit. Now, Monza is home to several Italian F1 teams. There's Lamborghini, there is Minardi, there's Alfa Tauri and Alfa Romeo as well. But it's more home to Ferrari than it is for any other team. And quite fittingly, Ferrari has taken more victories, pole positions, podiums and fastest laps at Monza than they have at any other circuit. Now let's talk about the team that could probably win both the titles this year, Red Bull. They've not won the Italian Grand Prix since 2013, which shows that they don't have the best of records at this track. Max Verstappen has never done better or finished higher than 5th here, and he's actually retired from his last 2 races at Monza. And this is the only venue apart from Mugello where he hasn't finished on the podium. Verstappen also remains the only driver to win all the races of a triple header in Formula 1. He did that in 2021 in the French, Styrian and Austrian races. And if he wins again on Sunday, it'll be the second time that he's achieved this very rare feat. Lastly, Fernando Alonso is set to equal yet another Kimi Raikkonen record on Sunday, this time for the most race starts in Formula 1. This is going to be his 349th race start, which means Singapore will be his 350th race in Formula 1. That was the stats preview. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you want to see more such stats and facts, do follow me on my Twitter and Instagram under the name F1 Stats Guru, and I'll catch you guys later.
Hey folks, welcome back into the Inside Line F1 podcast. The last voice you heard was that of F1 Stats Guru with our stats preview. And yes, unfortunately, he couldn't join us for the whole live discussion, but he'll be back for the race review episode and also for the watch along that we're going to have on Sunday. So stay tuned for all of that. But on the subject of Mercedes, on the subject of Ferrari, we've often tended not to give enough airtime to other midfield teams like Alpine and like McLaren. And funnily enough, they just ended up having an amazing battle last weekend in Zandvoort. And it seems like, Kunal, Fernando Alonso is genuinely closing his way back up the order. Now, not a lot of it, not 100% of it is just great Alonso driving, because we saw last weekend that Esteban Ocon did a great job, but he was just put on the wrong strategy. And he was beating Alonso comprehensively until the strategies got split up here and there. But again, this could be a fun fight, right? Lando Norris versus 2 Alpines, kind of similar to last season where we had McLaren versus 2 Ferraris. So that could be a fun storyline to track over the course of this weekend.
To add some of my own stats, so I'm just going to revisit the Ferrari Mercedes discussion, because I'm just going to read out the stats. Since the Australian Grand Prix this year, which was round 3, 13 races ago, Ferrari have scored a total of 298 points, which is 22.92 points per race, whereas Mercedes has scored 308 points, which is 23.69 points per race. So that's almost 0.7 points, 0.7 points per race higher than an average. So it's a very closely fought battle. And I'm sure if we take the trends in the more recent races, Mercedes has probably scored a little more on an average. But talking of Alpine, Let's remember, in the lower downforce spec, in the high speed sections or in the high speeds of circuits that we've seen, Alpine has also enjoyed a very strong straight line speed advantage, right? So Alpine, Alonso, remember Canada, remember some of the other straight line circuits, they were just able to hold on to their position with the straight line speed advantage. So I am definitely looking forward to that. And there is a battle for P7 in the Drivers' Championship that's also being heating up, right? So Alonso had a lot of pre-season bad luck and bad results, as we remember. But since Miami, which was 11 races ago, Lando Norris has scored 47 points. Esteban Ocon has scored 46 points. But Fernando Alonso has scored 57 points. I would love for Alonso, a 41-year-old whose age has come up for discussion during contracts and has been the reason for him to leave Alpine, actually finishes in seventh, which is also known as the best of the rest position.
Wouldn't that be fun, huh? But he's still doing a great job. And at this moment in time, there's not much you can say. It's just classic Fernando. You know exactly what you're going to get in terms of on track action, but you don't know what you're going to get off track. And that's just the best part about Fernando Alonso. It's just complete holistic entertainment all the way through. And this battle is going to be genuinely interesting all the way through this weekend. But first, Kunal, we should also talk about drivers to watch for this weekend. Drivers who desperately need a good weekend. And we've spoken about Fernando Alonso in a way. I mean, he does kind of. He doesn't kind of need it because he's not got anything to prove. We all know how good he is. And it won't make a major difference to his earnings or, let's say, motivation if he finishes eighth in the championship instead of seventh. But this weekend, I actually really have my eyes pinned on Mick Schumacher because there's been rumors swirling around that he might end up leaving Haas. He's definitely left the Ferrari Driver Academy in the end of 2022, but he is in need of a seat. There is one available at Alpine. There is one available at Williams for now. It'll be fun to see where he goes. And performances like what we saw at Silverstone early on will just help the teams make up their mind if they haven't quite already. And if he's thinking of Alpine, and if Alpine are thinking of him as well, there's Pierre Gasly doing a great job consistently, right? No, I mean, not so far this season, but they know what they're getting with Pierre Gasly. So for Mick, it's going to be a fun second half of the year just to try to prove that, yes, he does deserve his place on the grid. And those two races that we saw in Silverstone and Austria were not flukes.
I must actually just clarify one thing. So I don't believe, or rather, I'm very sure that Ferrari or the Ferrari Driver Academy have not released an official statement on Mick leaving by the end of the season. So a lot of websites have twisted a rumor and made it sound like a fact, right? And the second thing, there's also a seat available at Haas, Sommel, because till such time they do not decide or till such time they don't decide whether it's Mick or not, he technically is in the running as well. But that aside, yes, Mick needs a great result. Just him out qualifying and outperforming Kevin is good enough to show that, hey, I'm actually as dialed into the car as the Danish driver. The one driver I am excited about is Alexander Alban. At Spa, they qualified high up and they used their straight line speed advantage to keep position in the race. They knew Sandfoot would be bad for them, but getting a 12th in Sandfoot still had them excited because 12th is not bad on a circuit which is, diametrically opposite. I know people can challenge my view, but a circuit which has the opposite characteristics to Spa. I mean, at Sandfoot, 12th was good. So they are extremely excited about their prospects this weekend. And what's important is, weekends like these for the likes of Williams, for the likes of Alban, there's so much of anticipation because even that 1 point that they get is so fantastic, not just because it gets them closer to whatever place they are chasing in the constructors championship, but it's the ability for the driver to show that, hey, when the car was in the zone, when the circuit was within when we were able to exploit the strengths of the circuit and the car, boom, I could get points. And that is so crucial, especially for a driver like Alexander Albon, who we know is still a part of the Red Bull family, but may never drive for a Red Bull and has a multi-year contract with Williams. So Alban is definitely something I'm looking forward to. And then we have Lance Stroll, who has only finished in 10th place if he's ever scored a point this season. And he's done that, I think, 5 occasions. So I'm excited to see if he'll still just do 10th or he's probably going to move forward than that.
Wow. So is it? I mean, I know I'm being very harsh here. I don't think he's that bad, but some people might say, "Oh, well, that's just all that he's capable of. Mediocre, slap bang in the middle, P10." Some might say. Again, that's one part of my mind, not the rational part of my mind. But we also forgot that it's Alfa Romeo's home race this weekend, also for Alpha Tauri. So it's like an Alpha weekend, this one in a way. But it's Alfa Romeo's home race this time out, and they haven't quite come up with any special livery like they did back in Imola. So don't know what's going on over there. It would have been fun to see them dress up like Francesco from Cars 2, but that's not going to happen seemingly. And even they need they need a good weekend desperately. They don't need a bad weekend, and they've been having bad weekends all the way around. And for them, reliability has been such a major concern, and just watching them bounce back is it's just nice, right? No, nobody hates Alfa Romeo Sauber in a way, so it'll be fun to see how they end up progressing this weekend on the whole.
Especially for the likes of, say, Valtteri Bottas. He's not only not scored points since, I think, 5 or 6 races now, but it's also seemingly clear that Zhou Guan Yu has sort of closed in the gap, is able to match Valtteri Bottas or be within his range of performance. So I'd love to see Bottas get into the points. Alfa Romeo has did a roadshow to wake up Milan, I believe, as a part of their home race celebrations. There are going to be 112 Alfa Romeos doing various demonstration runs on track. So lots of activations that will happen there this weekend for Alfa Romeo. And Alpha Tauri, for them, will it be Colton Herta that they will announce for their home race? Because the FIA license, super license exemption is a big debate. I am of the opinion that there shouldn't be an exception, and I have two or maybe 3 points on this. The first is Colton Herta, great driver. Why don't we have him in Formula 2? Okay. He needs to go up against the likes of Felipe Drogovic and Liam Lawson and Jehan Daruvala and the likes, and see where he stands. I mean, we don't know yet because he's almost always just raced in Europe, right? And then let him go through the ranks and sort of get there. And who better than Red Bull to actually nurture his talent the way they've done several other times? The second is, of course, if that happens, and as we know, Pierre Gasly will go to Alpine. The second is Jacques Villeneuve is going to test the Alpine F1 car from last year after the race in Monza. Now, of course, the memes going around are that Alpine has really got a massively long list of drivers to replace Fernando Alonso next season. And since they don't want an old driver, they want an older driver, and Jacques Villeneuve, maybe that's that. But on a very, very serious note, this whole thing of limited preseason testing, no in-season testing, etc., has robbed us of something very interesting, which is a shootout for a seat between drivers. Now, I remember back in Force India in 2013, we had a shootout between Adrian Sutil, I think there was Jules Bianchi, and maybe there was Paul Di Resta. I'm not sure, but I do know that Sutil and Bianchi definitely were involved in a shootout. And when was the last time we actually saw F1 teams have a shootout? I can't remember. And probably one of the reasons is because there's anyway such little testing. And, simulator tools have evolved far more to give you a more representative view on a driver's talent and ability off the track as well.
That's how Nigel Mansell got his first seat at Lotus as well, through a shootout. He actually wasn't quite meant to go there, but he ended up accidentally going to a Lotus test, somehow found his way in, and in his very first test, he didn't have the right tyres on. So he felt that he was incapable as a Formula One driver. But on the second day of the shootout, he eventually ended up getting a seat. So it's crazy how that whole generation of Formula One has gone. Not that I was alive for it, but still, whatever, that's the point. Or maybe that Alpine just has an older man fetish, if you can call it that way, or maybe they don't know what age counts as old, but perhaps because they've done so many young driver tests with people who are above 40 now. So perhaps they just need to be told, okay, this is what old means, this is what young means. So perhaps they're just more open and more friendly than everyone, which is, I think, what we should be like in real life as well, right? But speaking of old things, I have a lot of excitement towards this weekend. Monza, 100 years of history. Do you know how much time it actually took to construct the circuit in its entirety in the first place, Kunal? Now, that doesn't mean in its current form, but back in 1922, can you guess how many days it must have taken Monza?
4 days.
Nah, four is a bit too less. It's actually just 110. 110 days, and everyone in the world was surprised back then, right? Because Italy was growing as a country, it was having a bigger automobile market, more manufacturers. You had Alfa Romeo, you had Fiat, and the likes building some great cars. And suddenly, Italy was like, "Wow, we need a racetrack, guys. We need to do something about it." So, not the Italian government, but the Automobile Club of Milan sanctioned this project and got it done within 110 days of its initial start time. Now, for context, Jeddah this year, I mean last year, was completed in 121 days. Yes, with a lot of modern facilities, but it shows you how construction and how much the demands of completing a Formula One track have changed over the years. That in the shortest space of time, you can now get so much more. And it's fascinating how Monza's history came about, how they consistently were the temple of speed. It's gone through so many changes and iterations as well. We saw the old oval being used firstly, then not being used and used in temporary forms, then being used for World Rally Championship rounds as well, and now used for just show purposes and whatnot. But it's so much of history all coming together, and I still find it remarkable that within 110 days, Monza was done and dusted for its first ever race. So crazy how times have evolved, and I just want to see how.
Incredible.
Yeah, incredible indeed. Just like the racing we hope this weekend. Let's hope to see a really fun fight this weekend in Monza. And if we do get a fun fight, I'll tell you what, a fun place to watch it will be on our live race watch alongs on PTM Insider, for which you can sign up by clicking on the link in the description of this episode. So why don't you do that? Why don't you join us and Steve Slater to watch the race together? And we can discuss things like the strategy, the start of the race, the wheel to wheel battles, all together. So, see you on Sunday, folks, and we'll be back on Monday with the race review episode. Have a good weekend. Bye bye.